Recognize that tune, and you know it's time for Relics Radio. This is a family-friendly show, so the entire family can join us as we talk metal detecting and relic hunting. You can call into the show at 270-495-0315 or join in the chat and post any comments or questions you might have, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. You're listening to Relics Radio of Southern Kentucky and Middle Tennessee. And you are live again on Relics Radio. It is September the 4th, 2018. We're coming to you from Southern Kentucky and Middle Tennessee on Relics Radio tonight. I am your host, Digging with Seven.
And I'm your co-host, Tennessee Jeff.
What's going on tonight, Jeff?
Not much. I was just thinking, you said it was the 4th, and man, this year is going by fast.
It really is, I tell you. And but it's the summer that won't end.
That's right. It just keeps on. And I was out today mowing the yard, and I mean, it was miserable. And of course, this is that dry heat. At least the humidity's left out for a little while, so hopefully it doesn't come back.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's been hot here. I mean, I've been when I'm out, I'm sweating. Of course, I sweat a lot anyway.
Yeah, you sweat in front of an air conditioner.
Yeah,
so.
I do. I'll be wetter than I've always bring me a shirt change. I'm like Bill Marsh. I got to change shirts 2 or 3 times. But Jeff be just as dry. My hair's all wet and everything. Jeff just as dry. I don't know what the deal is on that. We've had a busy week this week, haven't we?
We sure have. It's been busy.
I tell you, we appreciate Mike Lyman, M.A. Lyman 24, Monday night. We were on his live stream. That was fun, wasn't it?
It sure was, and that was my first one I've ever done, and I really enjoyed it. So, I mean, luckily I had the time to do it, and Mom was at home to watch Avery. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed myself. So.
And DK reached out and wants us to do a Digger Spotlight with him sometime. We're still trying to figure out a date. He wanted to do that on a Wednesday, and I can't do it on a Wednesday, and so we're trying to figure out another day when we don't conflict with anything. And while we're talking about it, then on as soon as we got off Monday night on Mike Lyman's live stream, went on American Digger Relic Roundup, and those of you that haven't heard that show, that's the C-SPAN version of the commission meeting down in Montgomery, Alabama, about the Alabama River there at Selma and what they're trying to do down there. And then on Tuesday night, we took the more important clips out of that. We took 5 of those and had commentary and what have you on that. So if you get a chance, go back and check out American Digger Relic Roundup on Monday night and History Seekers on Tuesday night, and you'll get a better sense of what they're trying to do there in Alabama. And, you know, guys, don't sit back and think, well, that's in Alabama and it doesn't affect me where I'm at in Ohio or Kentucky or Tennessee or Virginia. This is just them getting a foot in the door, and it's coming to a town near you. You know, it's coming to your hometown before you know it.
It sure will if you don't pay attention. Of course, that's with everything. If you don't pay attention, it's going to happen. So.
Yeah, and he said that he's going to get some form letters done up, and then we were going to post those on all of our social media. And so everybody that listens to our show will be able to take one of those form letters and send it where it needs to be sent. we're thinking about doing a petition too and sending it to that commission to try and save that little mile stretch of water there from being put on the registry and taken away from metal detectors because they found 2 Civil War bullets. That's it. So,
and how much did it cost to find them 2 Civil War bullets?
They claim it cost the state $15,000. So that's $7,500 per bullet. But the truth is, it was probably $50,000 by the time federal money gets in there. So you're talking about $25,000 a bullet. I'll hunt all day long for the $7,500 bullets, I'll tell you.
Well, I've got a few bullets. I'll sell them if they want to buy them. So.
Yeah, they don't want to do that, though, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Who we got in the chat? Go ahead.
I think Missouri Mike's messing with us. He said today the 55 degrees here today was the high. So now, can you imagine 55 degrees?
In Missouri,
yeah.
That's where he's at. Unless they're on a road trip. Now, they may be off up. You don't ever know about them guys. I'll just tell you.
They may be in Nome, Alaska.
They are.
I see Jeff Ford's in the chat. So,
well, go ahead and tell us who's all's in the chat real quick.
We got Chris. We got Ohio Relic Hunter, Bill Hayes. Let's move on up here a little bit. Let's see. We got Ken Guthrie. Hey, there's Matt Purdue. He's in the house. It's going to take me a minute. Dennis is in the house. So Larry Stevens. That's about it right now.
Well,
of course, Earl from Virginia's in the house too. So imagine that.
Earl's in the house, and Earl is on the phone. What's going on, Earl?
No, not a whole lot, Lloyd. Jeff, how you guys doing?
Just fine.
We're doing good. Fine. We've been looking forward to this show, and I got the opportunity to finally meet you in the spring at DIV. Now, Jeff had already met you, and you know what he told me about you before we got there?
Snoring.
Yeah, that's exactly what he told me. we roomed together, and he said, "You better get ready, because he snores."
Yeah. I forewarned you guys before I came down. I brought you earplugs, though, didn't I?
Yeah, and I brought my noise machine. I've got a white noise machine that I run, and so I done all right. I don't know how Jeff done.
Well, I ended up putting 2 sets of earplugs in, and then the air conditioning, I turned it all the way up, and your noise making. And so yeah, I finally went to sleep.
My daughter and wife will confirm you. They kick me out of the room. I usually sleep in the kitchen, out in the living room. They sleep in the bedroom.
I can see why, buddy. So, we got Will Johnson in the house now. So
yeah, I seen
one of these days
I seen Will in there. Will is our buddy out from California. Met him last year at DIV, and got to hunt with him. And then he came down to Middle Tennessee, didn't he, Jeff?
Mm-hmm. And then he's got a trip planned coming in, I think, the 14th and 15th of this month. So that should be a pretty good time. He's got a meeting in Nashville, and then he contacted me, and I don't know if he's going to stay in the bait house or not. I really don't know if he's going to stay there or get him a hotel. But
14th and 15th of this month in October. Well,
yep.
That's not that far away, I'll just tell you.
No, it's not.
I'll enjoy hunting with him again. Hey, Earl, how many DIVs have you been to?
I think it's been 9 altogether. The first one was, I think when Denny was talking last night, DIV 10, which is the first time we went to Brandy Rock, was my first hunt. And I was swinging a Spectrum XL. I was swinging a white Spectrum XLT.
It was
a tough day.
It is tough there. But now, you did well at the New York camp this year.
Yeah, that DIV 40, things were working for me. Things were working really well. Actually, the day 2 I got plugged. I got to admit, you guys, I didn't find hardly squat day 2, but day 2 I got in that thing that everybody gets into is you want to wander and see the property a little bit, and then when you do get a few hits, you keep walking because you want to see more of it, and you say, hey, I can get a better spot, and it usually kills you. So and that's what happens. So day 3, I turned around, got smart, and hunkered in up there at the parking lot at that house site, and I got lucky up there too. Day 1 was really great though. It turned out pretty good. It was hot as a dickens that day though.
It sure was. You walked along the river, and then you ended up getting a good find there.
Yeah, actually, to be honest though, I started off exactly where you guys were. Remember that tree was laying down on the path at the top of the hill?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There was a big tree.
I sat on it a bunch.
Yep. Well, I got to there, and that's where I turned left, and I only went 20 feet. And right down from there is where all the good finds are at. I went 20 feet in those thickets there. I got a bull and a J hook, and I can't remember a button. I think it was an eagle coat button, and I should have stayed right there then because I was 15 feet from where them New Yorkers came from. They were right down the right of that. And then I got antsy and went down the bottom of the hill, didn't find squat for a while, and then I got down there where them guys were. You know where that sword was dug with the reversed handle on it?
Yeah, down there at the old colonial house.
They were right there, and I was dying for water. I was out of water, and they didn't have any water, so I started walking back to cars, but there was another tree had fallen down there along the riverbank, and when I was talking to them, I noticed there was a canal there. There was a canal beside the river, and I said, is that still on our HUD property? And they go, yeah. It says, you can, even though the fence is here, you can go all the way to the river. So I jumped over where that tree had fallen over. In 5 minutes, I found that fork tongue, or that split tongue fork, or a 2-tang fork. And I was looking around, and I was thirsty as heck, and I seen that little spring bubble up, and I said, if I was a soldier, I'd go to that spring right there where I was eating my breakfast. And I went over there and had swung 10 seconds, and I got that screaming signal. And I reached in the puddle at first because I thought it was laying right there on the ground. And it was basically laying on the ground, but I just missed it. I took one scoop of dirt, and I heard that thing pop out as soon as I rolled the dirt out, and it was laying right there in that puddle.
And tell everybody what it was.
It was a U.S. box plate with Smith and W.H. Smith backmark on it. And the cool thing about it was I've never dug a box plate, so that really made my day. I've dug belt plates, I've dug breastplates, I've dug sword plates, but I've never got a box plate, so that just made my day right there.
That's good. One thing about Earl, I've hunted with him a few times now, and had the luck to do that. And once you try to hang with Earl, relic hunting, you can't do it. I mean, once he hits that ground, buddy, he is gone. And then, I mean, of course, I look up and I look around. I was like, where'd Earl go? And then I won't see him until that evening. So.
Well, that's the deal with me. See, I went up there with Earl that first morning, and of course, that was a straight up and downhill climb. Anybody that has been there will tell you. And I had to stop and rest, and I think Butch Holcomb camped out there about halfway up for a little while. But anyway, I had to rest, and by the time I got up there, I couldn't find Earl. I mean, I looked everywhere up there. And whenever I got to that tree, Jeff finally come up that way, and we went to the right and got in that thicket and went to the end of it, and then we come back and hunted the front part. If we'd have just went in the woods right there where the tree was, that's where all of the New York buttons came from.
It sure was.
Right there. It was right there along that trench line where that rifle trench line was sitting at, or whatever trench line it was. I don't know if it was a rifle trench line, but it could have been their footpath that just wore down dig, but it looked more like a defensive rifle trench that they were eating their meals on and throwing all the that's where all the ration cans were and everything else. So they were just using it as the dump zone.
Yeah. Well, out of all the DIVs you've been to, what has been your best DIV, your best farm that you've hunted?
Actually, I like that one. I like that one because it worked for me, even though day 2 was a bust. I'm going to tell you, even though there wasn't a whole lot well, on the final day, there was a lot of stuff found. I don't think you all made it for the lunch, did you?
No, we didn't. I was too far away.
If you would have come down to lunch, you would have been blown away what was actually found, because it was like triple what I expected based off of what every time you bumped into somebody, I'm not finding this, I'm not finding that. But when you really got down there that Sunday lunch, there was a lot of good finds in there. There wasn't a lot of lead, I will admit that, but there was a lot of out of the ordinary brass that came out of there, and some iron relics and everything else. But there's still a lot more in there because there's colonial house sites in there, there's Civil War house sites in there, and then there's the camps. And I wouldn't be too sure if there ain't another camp down in there somewhere. I mean,
yeah,
the New York camp was there. The New York camp was there, and that other camp up front, and with the water around there, and them guys there as big as they were, there was probably other camps on that property.
Did we lose
still there?
No, yeah.
No, I'm still here.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and when you walk up that road to the New York camp, you had that rock wall along the right side. That looked good to me, and me and Jeff hunted that some, and we really didn't find anything there. I think there was a button or two found along the road, but not like it was on the other side. But that wasn't on the property. If we could have got on that side of that rock wall, I would say that there's quite a bit of stuff there.
I agree with you. That's what I kept eyeballing too. And I went back to that wall several times just looking over there. It was definitely drawing your attention, that's for sure.
Yeah, on the other side of the property line, it always does that. It like the grass is greener on the other side, but sometimes it's not. But that sure did look like it was greener on that side.
That's what you always think. You always think if I could just get over there. Earl, it's going to surprise everybody. But you do all that hunting in Virginia, and you don't have a GPX, do you?
No, I use a White's MXT. I started off with when I first started in '97. I had I borrowed my uncle's Garrett GTA 1000 for about 8 months, and I borrowed it. And then I had a friend who bought a Spectrum XLT. He didn't like it. He used it 3 times, and I bought that machine off of him. I used it for about 6-7 years, and that was a good machine. I wish I still had that machine. That was great for this area. And then I went to the White's MXT, which I've been using through most of my DIVs, except for this last one. I did use the Garrett on the last day on the last one. But I've used the MXT on 8 of the 9 digs that I've been on, and then I got the Garrett AT Pro. So right now all I got is the MXT and AT Pro. That's it. I don't have any Pulse machines.
And that worked out there because at most of those DIVs out in the field, now in the woods is different. And I think that was what was different with this hunt here, is that so much of it was in the woods, and so many of those bullets were shallow because you didn't have much soil up on top of the hill there. And the GPXs were blanking on those bullets. That's why we weren't finding them. I mean, you thought that they were just big pieces of iron.
Yeah. I actually, with my machine, it was doing the same, Lloyd. Up there where that camp was at, that place was just littered in ration can pieces. It was just, it was like acorns laying from a dropped tree. I mean, the ration can pieces were just everywhere in there, and the signals were so good with the ration cans that you were just getting false signals all over the place, and so it was hard to distinguish anything good. Like you said, they were shallow.
That's right. While we're speaking of the gain and stuff, Will Johnson had a question for Hartsville in Virginia, running your gain high or low, like 4 or 5. Of course, that's for a GPX. What do you normally run your sensitivity at on your whites?
I'm going to be honest with you. I use, except for the bigger coil, except when I got my, I got a 13-inch Ultimate Draco. I guess it's Draco. I forget. For my Garrett, I'll turn it back about 1 notch, maybe 2 notches for the 13-inch coil, and I'll turn, I got a 12-inch butterfly coil for the MXT, and I'll turn it back a notch on that. But other than that, I'm pretty much wide open on sensitivity most of the time, at least in my area. Down DIVs, I'm pretty much M2 as well. Now, the MXT, you got a little different setup. You basically got your gain, and I usually run the gain about 10, and even +1, which is a little bit above the high mark. You can go up to +4, but I'll run it all the way up to 10 and +1. Even down at DIV, I'll do all right with it. It stays stable enough for that.
Yeah, that's good. As long as you run stable, it helps out a lot. I've been there, and it just be sporadic, and then, of course, not running stable. And I know you miss a lot of targets while it's doing that.
Oh, yeah.
That's the thing you got to do. I don't care what kind of machine you've got. If that machine's not running stable, you're missing targets. And I've learned that on GPX. I'm running mine, most of the time, I'm running mine around 5 or 6 on the gain. Now, sometimes if I get in a real clean area, like the picket post is real clean there, and there's stuff that is really deep, I'll go on up to 9 or 10 and with my big coil. But in the 44 woods and places like that, if I lower that down to 5, 6, I do a whole lot better because it blanks on a lot of that stuff, and it's so chattery that you can't find those little whisper signals.
No. So go ahead, Earl.
Here's the secret with the MXT at DIV. you got, well, almost any machine. What you're used to at home and you go to DIV, it's totally opposite. That machine, if you expect your machine to operate like it does back home, you might as well hang it up because it doesn't. So with that in mind, when you go into DIV with the MXT, even though it's, the VLF machine, you can still make it work. But what you got to do is you got to listen for the reverse. So a lot of people don't like that the squelch. What I'll do is I'll turn the squelch up so it's got a constant hum, real low hum all the time. And then what you get at DIV is what they call, what we signified when we went to Culpeper the first time, was what the ghost signal. So what'll happen is when you get over a bullet that's about 8 inches deep, your squelch or your background noise will just die out. It'll be like a flat spot. So instead of being the screaming signal you get like a bullet home, it will be a dead signal on the MXT down there at Culpeper, or a ghost signal. So you got to almost turn your squelch up enough where you got low background noise and you listen for the dead spots. And then on top of it, what we also found was you can go trigger forward, which is thrown in some discrimination, which helps cut through some of that junk in the ground. And a lot of people don't like using that, but on the MXT, you got the option to go trigger forward. We went trigger forward, especially in Culp's Hill down there in the parking area to the right. There's a good field there that'll work really great on. And you just turn that squelch up, listen for them ghost signals, and go trigger forward, and you're rocking.
Man, that sounds good. So I can say you've hunted Virginia, the red dirt, quite a while with the VLF. What's the best VLF machine you've used in Culpeper?
Like I said, I've used the MXT 8 times. The Garrett this last time, but only in that front field. Now, is that the best one out there? I would say no. The TDI is a pulse machine too, right? The TDI was the next step from the MXT. I don't know. The MXT does good there. I've heard what the one Tesoro does good there, and I'm sure this new Knox is probably going to kill it out of the park. That should probably work fairly well there too, as long as it bounces well.
Hey guys, we need to take a break right here and run a commercial, and we'll be right back.
Hey, Seven, we's looking good in our new Relics Radio T-shirts.
Yeah, Ken and Mark Guthrie of detectors.com done brung them to us.
Yep. And they makes other shirts, too.
Yeah, boy. Detectors.com can handle tees for your club, hunt, or any other promotion folks may have.
They even got the Wide Pride shirts.
Yeah, them boys does the manatee crawl.
Yeah, scooting on their bellies.
That's what I said. The manatee crawl.
Looks like slugs eating jelly.
So whether you hunt horizontal or vertical, tell the folks where they need to go, TJ.
www.detectors.com.
And Earl from Virginia's got one of those Relics Radio T-shirts, and he's in our contest. I want to remind you guys, check out detectors.com, get you a Relics Radio T-shirt, take a picture of yourself, come to the Relics Radio Facebook group page and put that picture there. We'll give you a number. Sometime in November, we're going to do a random generator number draw, and some lucky person is going to win a Garrett Pro Pointer AT. And Ken told me the other day he thinks he's going to throw a Relics Radio hoodie in there, too, with that. So get some good prizes.
That is some good prizes. I've got to get with him, and I need to buy a hoodie. Of course, it's getting that time of year. It's not right now, but it won't be long. It'll be that time of year I need the hoodie. So
I didn't need a hoodie today, I'll tell you that.
No, I didn't when I was mowing the yard for sure. So,
hey, give out our call-in number, and somebody surely is wanting to ask. And it's kind of aggravating because I've lobbied so much with Skype to let us keep this old version where we can take calls and add the group and have 4 or 5 people, and then nobody's calling. I've kind of wasted all my time. But Jeff put it in there. It's 270-495-0315. And I cut you off there a while ago, Jeff. I think you had something else you was going to ask Earl.
Oh, of course. Well, get back to the Skype thing. It's nice to have the call in where Are we the only ones still able to have someone to call in?
No, Josh still can, and Jeff Lupert and them, they still can. I think. I don't know on theirs, but History Seekers.
I just thought you were special, and I thought we were the only ones that could have that.
No. Jeff hadn't. I mean, Josh hadn't updated yet either, and he sent a message to me the other day that he'd got an email from Skype that they were going to kill these off November the 1st. I didn't get that email, so I may have to get back on their back again and stop all that. But right now, History Seekers and us have the same Skype account. They're using our number and everything over there. So this number here will get you into each show. And go ahead.
All right. Dennis had this question for you, Earl. What's the weirdest, the strangest thing you've ever dug up?
The weirdest thing I've dug up? Wow. A mole.
I'd say.
Scared the bejesus out of me, man. It was in the fall, digging up a mole that was in the ground. That was probably the weirdest thing I've ever done.
I bet. So it just popped up out of the ground like as you were digging the target?
It was down about 5 inches, trying to dig a bullet signal, and he looked about, they're about the size of a mouse, and that thing just rolled out and just caught me off guard, man. It's like, what the heck is that?
I bet. I've never dug one up. What about you, Seven?
No, I never have dug a mole, but I remember that time whenever I was digging one of those, what was it, a range guide. I looked up and there was a dog looking at me in the face, and I made a little hay out of that. But, hey, Earl, I remember whenever I first started watching your videos about those intertwined, what are they, bit bosses that you found?
Bit bosses.
Yeah. Talk about those.
That was from that field I had in Stevenson, Virginia, right there at Clearbrook, which is actually a little bit of both a battle area for the 3rd Winchester and actually run over from the 2nd Winchester. So it's 2 battles ran through there or in that vicinity. That one I had maps for and been spying for 10 years. That field, we'd have gotten lucky. They were putting in some storage buildings about half a mile from there, and we got lucky to dig that and found some really nice items. It was a little picket spot, and for years I wanted to get in that field. Well, make a long story short, I found out the guy that owned it was a childhood friend of mine and a good friend of my dad's, and his dad were good friends. And so I got to dig the place about 8 months before I lost it. And I won't even get into why I lost it. Basically, I lost it because the renter. The renter was a former owner, and he was an old farmer that didn't want anybody on his land, and he ended up causing problems, so I no longer got access. But the intertwined bit bosses, when I dug at, that field had a little bit of everything. It had some camp stuff in it. It had some Confederate Gardner bullets in it. It had some carved lead on the north side of the property, and it had some camp stuff and skirmish stuff on the south side of the property. And actually, the field was only 7 acres. What was killer about it, there was 2 other fields that I never got to dig. They were next to it were going to be even more better than that one. And I was kind of working it because he had cows in there, and he didn't want me to work at it at the time. So I really missed out on the big deal. The big relics were in those 2 fields. So the one day I found the bit boss. I think I had my White's MXT. It was actually in the spot where I hadn't found hardly anything in until that day, and I was leaving. However, you all were talking the other day. I can't remember who it was, Ken or somebody was talking about walking. No, it was Denny. He was talking about walking back to the truck and swinging the cool. So I was walking back to my truck, and it was hot as blazes. It was like 100 degrees, and the humidity was way up, and I just had to get out of there. I was out of water, and I was swinging back to the truck, and I got this screaming signal, and about 5 inches was that bit boss, and it turned up on the back side, and I knew right off the bat it was something different because it had a dish back on it. And when I flipped it over, I have seen Intertwined US, and I about freaked out, and then I looked on the outside and had to see. I've never seen one dug before. So 3 months later, I kept hunting. I said, man, to me, it looked like it had been stripped off the bit. So 3 months later, I kept hunting that area, general vicinity. Usually when I left, I kind of swept through there. And finally, 3 months later, I had my Garrett, and I got another signal. It was about 25 yards away, and it was the other side of the bit. And I got both of the bit bosses. And actually, what I think it was a Confederate soldier, Confederate cavalry, had stripped the bosses off when they captured some horses, and they stripped the bits off and reused the bridle bits, or reused the bridles, what I think it was. But it was they were associated to, according to American Digger and them and the guys that when they put it in the magazine that time, it was for Just Doug section. They said it was connected to the Sheridan's Corps, which Sheridan was in that area, and so was Custer. Custer was about 200 yards from there. That was the other field I didn't get to hunt. Custer was actually about 200 yards from where I found them.
They are beautiful. I tell you what, they're the most amazing. The way that the USA just intertwines on that. I've got a US bit boss, but nothing like that. I mean, they were special. And you know that that wouldn't have been just for an enlisted man, would it?
No, it's probably Sheridan's. It's probably his top corps, his top staff corps. I figure it was part of his immediate corps, his cavalry corps.
And how far apart did you find them?
About 25 yards, 25, maybe 30 at the most. It was a swampy area. That's why I kind of eluded it most of the time. Most of the stuff in that area was just trash. There were certain spots in it, even though it was only 7 acres, there was like 4 little knolls on it. Most of the relics were on the knoll, at the top of the knoll, or trailing right off as it starts tapering down off the knoll. And at the bottoms, they were kind of like wet, sumpy areas. And the sumpy areas are more like farmer's trash, and then at the top of the knolls and running off is where all the Civil War relics were hiding.
Huh.
So I kind of avoided that.
What y'all were talking about last week, where the plow line stopped. I wonder if it got swampy and then they just...
I don't know.
This field was like that. The Civil War relics were actually 5 inches and up, and all the trash was like 5 inches and deeper. So I had that scenario like you were all talking the other week where it had been tilled and rolled over with a deep till, and then when I was hunting that field, it hadn't been tilled in probably 10 years. It was just a field. It had no longer been used for anything. But I guess the last time it done, like you all say, like 3 rotations to rotate everything around. Mm-hmm. It must have been mid-rotation. All the modern trash was deep, and the Civil War stuff was in 5 inches or less, and most of it.
I'll take that situation any day, where you can dig you dig the shallow stuff and it's the good stuff. But it took about 3 weeks to figure that out, though, man. It was quite confusing at first. Yeah, you wouldn't think that, And me and Jeff have been to some spots before, and you get a deep signal, and of course you're thinking, it's a plate or something other. Hey, Matt Howell came in. What's going on, Matt?
Hello, Matt.
And but you think it's got to be something good, and then you dig down a foot, and you got a modern Coke can, aluminum Coke can or something other. That's always discouraging. But there is a possibility that if it's, and we still have tobacco fields here, so they will, they'll still turn the ground on most of the tobacco fields. Now they're doing a little bit of no-till on that now, but most of it, they still turn them. So you work those relics that were deep back to the surface, so you never know anymore.
Yeah, I got some nice relics. The very first day we went in there, my old hunting buddy Ian, his name's Ian Zuckerman. We used to hunt when he was in high school. We haven't hunted much lately because he had, life brings different changes, and he had college and job, but he's moved back to town. I see him every once in a while. But him and I got to go that day, and it wasn't 5 minutes into that field. We parked, and there's a gun range right beside it. They're playing the national anthem. We stood there and held our hand over our heart for the national anthem, and we started swinging a call. There wasn't 3 signals. I got 2 beer cans, like you were talking about, and the third signal was a belt buckle. It was down about 4 inches. I couldn't believe it, man. That was the start of that field. That's how it started off.
Man, that sounds pretty cool. It is like the construction site here in my town, Gallatin. Of course, the high school is pretty close, and you could hear the band playing as we were out there metal detecting a few times. So that was pretty cool. So,
and I never went to film a clip there that an ambulance or a cop didn't come by with a siren on.
No, it seems like as soon as you turned it on, that's what they were after.
Yeah.
They were after you guys, man.
No, they wasn't after us. We had permission to hunt that. But I think there was a fire station there pretty close because some of those were fire trucks. But I'm serious. Every time I'd go to, and I made comment about it one time, every time I go to film a clip, there's a siren that comes up. Hey, Earl, what is in your mind, and I know that it may be hard to answer this, and you may have to talk about 2 or 3 different things, but what's the favorite thing that you've ever found?
I recently posted on Instagram. I got an Instagram account, and it's Earl from Virginia, too, and I put a couple posts this past week on some of my favorites. But probably one of them is a Louisiana overcoat button. I was happy to get that because we hunted a site out in 522 that was one of Sheridan's camps, and I got a button back about one time, and it was a Louisiana puffback button back, and it was missing the face. And I missed out, and my two friends, Ian and another guy, they both found, I stepped on top of a CS staff, and Ian came up behind me and dug the CS staff right out of my footprint. And then I found a Louisiana about 20 yards from it. And then we found a lot of good stuff at that camp. But I always had a heartbreaker because that wasn't a whole button. That would have been my first Confederate button. 3 years later on Juba Early, we were hunting first Winchester site, which is a site we hunted when I started metal detecting. We hunted there for 3 years. And within a week, I got a Maryland overcoat button, which was associated to the first Maryland Infantry, which is Confederate states, not Union. They were actually Union and Confederate beginning the war. And then I got a Louisiana overcoat puffback with crew gold gilt, and there's a picture of that on my Instagram account. It's probably got to be my favorite button. But also in there, between those two signals, within 10 feet, I got a nice, about 2-inch paleo black chert Indian point. So between those three relics within 10 yards of each other, it's got to be one of my best finds ever.
Man, that's what the next question I had was. I know you're into Native American artifact hunting, and I was going to ask what's the best Native American artifact you've ever found?
That point there. Well, the one that's memorable is the very first one, which was also in the area we call Juba Early. It's all gone now. It's all a housing development. And, there was a spring in the middle of this development when they did it, and they actually blasted this spring for 1 month straight at 5:30 every day to try to kill that spring because they were building an old folks housing development there. And they ended up killing the creek. They had to stop blasting because they killed the creek for like 3 weeks. So somewhere in the line, there's a huge canal under the ground where they did that. But right down from that spring, there was a hillside where there was a bunch of there was a bunch of flakes and stuff and points. And I found a rose quartz point in there, and that was my very first point I think I ever found. I was like immediately addicted. I eyeballed that thing we were hunting. There was a mud hole. I sank down to my knees trying to get it, and I'll never forget that day, and it was just the coolest thing. I thought that was better than a bullet. I don't know why, but it was just interesting as heck.
Well, I'll say it was.
You don't find any history any older than that. And, along the Cumberland River here, we had a lot of Indian occupation here. And back whenever everybody deep plowed here in Kentucky, my wife and I, when we get off work and come home, of course, we lived across the river, and whenever they would turn that and then disc it down after you had a good rain, well, we'd walk those fields, and, you just, some of them just be laying out on a pedestal of mud or clod or something other. Some of them you just see part of the point, but you get to the point where you can recognize those, if they're, even if you just see part of them, you can see the worked parts and everything. But I tell you, you don't get any older history than that.
No, for us around here, most of our points are the quartz, the white quartz or the clear quartz crystal type points, which are very crude to begin with. And most of our Indian artifacts are deep in this area in the valley. I mean, we're in the Shenandoah Valley, so most of your Indian sites are buried 4 feet deep. But if you get along the riverbanks, along these creeks, on the hillsides and stuff like you're talking about, you'll find them occasionally. And I found most of mine metal detecting. Just keep my eyeballs. I start seeing quartz and I keep my eyes open. That's kind of like the flag for me. I found a point, a button one there at DIV 40 up towards the barns up there when we were second day. Found one up there. Coles Hill on DIV. There was down there at the bottom flat below Coles Hill, looking towards the creek. That cornfield where all the bones and stuff were scattered. There was quartz points all through that field. I found 3 or 4 in there that first time we went there.
Man, that's pretty cool. Like around here, I mean, most of our arrowheads from Native Americans is out of flint. So, I mean, and that's how I found most of mine is just walking, digging relics or just walking the cow paths and stuff, and then you'll find them that way. So, yeah,
I think you had a show one time, Jeff, where you were walking a cow path and you found a point laying on the ground last year.
Yeah. Sure did, and one of my best points. I mean, of course, it was broke, but I mean, it was one of my. Actually, it was a tip to a spear, and but I mean, it was a great find. So
that was at the infantry camp, wasn't it?
It sure was. Yeah.
I've got lucky a couple times too. Like whenever I'm out, I look for them if the area looks right. We got a spot that we hunt with my brother down at the river, Shenandoah River. It's right along the riverbed, and there's a sod field there on the property. And whenever we come walking out there from hunting, my brother goes, "You gonna go looking? You looking for them artifacts again?" Because when we come out, I take the long walk across the sod field, and he just beelines it back to the cars. And I found 4 or 5 nice points out of that sod field down there. One's a pretty good sized spear point, busted in half, but. He just thought it was the weirdest thing. I was spending my time walking through the mud looking for freaking arrowheads out in the sod field, but it was a lot of fun.
Matt Howe had a question. What DIVs are you going to this fall, or you're not going to any this fall?
No, unfortunately, I'm not. I'm out of vacation time, and it'll probably be the spring before I get back in there if I go again.
Be spring before I go again too.
Yeah, it will.
I don't have time in the fall. Got too much going on, and you got Thanksgiving and Christmas and all that, and it's just kind of rough in the fall to me. Although the weather might be a little bit better than it is in the spring. I don't know.
Yeah,
go ahead, Earl.
Yeah, it could be 50-50 on the weather. It's about the same spring and fall. It could be colder in the Dickens, or it could be warm as the Dickens. It's a crap shot. But when John has them hunts, is the best opportunity to have them hunts by far in this area. Those are like your peak prime weeks to be metal detecting on the average. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Now I've seen them have a couple that was during the summer, and I mean it was just hot as blazes, and it'd be hard to dig. But I mean most of them are in good time of year, so where the ground is moist and stuff. So.
Yeah.
Well, how many years have you been into metal detecting, and then how did you get started?
Started in 1997. How did I get started? Actually, I got addicted. I didn't hunt, but I got addicted when I was about 7 years old in my grandmother's house. She lived in town here in Winchester, and she lived on Mosby Street. And me and my brother were playing in the yard about, I think it was 5 or 6 years old. And right in the corner of the fence line to our neighbor's house, I spotted a 3-ringer laying on the ground. And I just thought that was the coolest thing as a kid.
Man.
And that stuck in my head all those years. I had no idea what it was. I think I went in and asked my grandma and granddad, and they told me what it was. And, hey, that's from the Civil War. So I held on to it. I still got it. It's on my bookcase in here. And then around 72, I wasn't much older. I was probably about 12 or 13. We moved to Steven City, and Butch Fravel, I think it was, the guy at Metal Detectors, he's been around for a while in Steven City, spotted him metal detecting a house site down the end of our block. And I stood there for 2 hours watching him, stayed away from him, just watched him on my bike, and at the end he came up to me and showed me what he dug, and he handed me a bullet there that day. And that was pretty much it. I was addicted at that point. I hadn't even never swung a metal detector in my life. So in 97, I had a chance to get a metal detector. The first day out was in my uncle's property, borrowing I had 2 uncles. One gave me the machine, and the other one had the land. And the first day I found sort of like a hunting knife blade that had a Gardner laying on top. And there's actually impression in the blade from the Gardner bullet. And I found that in one hole. And then I found a piece of grape shot that was about 2 inches around on a rock line, not too far from it. And I found all that the first day I ever went hunting. I was done. I was fully addicted after that.
I can see why.
Yeah, it doesn't take much. Hey, guys, we got another commercial that we need to run. We'll be back in 2. If your passion is metal detecting, then you know how much your success is based on the equipment you use. Let my buddy Tim Henderson of Murray Branch Outdoors in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, help you with that. Tim is an authorized dealer of Garrett, XP Deus, Tesoro, and Macro detectors and supplies, and he is now an authorized dealer for Mine Lab. So, if you're looking to get your hands on the new Equinox 600 or 800, then Tim is your guy. Murray Branch Outdoors is not only competitive in their prices, but the service after the sale is second to none. Tim not only sells detectors, he uses them, and so he can answer any questions you might have. Murray Branch Outdoors also deals in used detectors, and he'll take your old detector in on trade when you decide to upgrade. So give Tim of Murray Branch Outdoors a call at 615-948-4611, and be sure and tell him Relics Radio sent you. And Tim is a great guy, good hunting partner for us. And you call him, he will give you the best deal that you can get. And while we were on that break, Matt Howell called in. What's going on tonight, Matt?
How you guys doing?
Hello, Matt.
Hey, Matt.
We're doing good.
How you doing, Errol?
Pretty good.
Yeah. I'm just admiring that story of standing watching somebody for hours. I think that's
yeah.
fascinating, man.
Yeah, that was quite an experience as a kid, man. It's like, what is that guy doing? It just amazed me.
I mean, for him to hand you something, I think that's really, really cool.
Yep.
Hey, both of you guys are there in Virginia, and that's the hotbed of Civil War hunting, and everybody just dreams of being there in Virginia. What are the pluses to living there in Virginia, and what are the cons for living there also?
You want to go first, Matt?
I mean, I'll give you a con right now.
Okay.
It's 93 degrees in October.
It's that way in Kentucky and Tennessee too.
Yeah, in Alabama, well, it's hotter. But
yeah, another con is the amount of people that are metal detecting nowadays. We're running over each other quite a bit. Or you got the people like you all talked in previous shows, where you got people watching everything you do to find out where your sites are at, and they'll go in after you and all that stuff. So, like when I started in '97, there was 27 people maybe max that were hunting on a regular basis. Probably less than that. Now I bet you there's 200 to 300, if not more, in this area that's swinging almost every day.
Yeah.
So,
I've got a question for both of you. Okay, have either one of y'all ever had a farm that y'all hunted that it turned into be a DIV property?
No.
Yeah. I currently have permission to a pretty recent DIV property. But it doesn't bother me. It's just been, and there's still, those properties are so full of stuff that it doesn't really matter. You could have permissions for years and have dozens of DIVs after DIVs. You just never hunt them all.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with Matt. Just like Brandy Rock, I'd go in there again in a heartbeat, even after, eight hunts in there, six, or at least 6 hunts, with 400 people a crack. I would go back there in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I would too. I would go to Wisconsin Hill, Brandy. I would go. And, it's funny. I saw a gentleman who posted something online, and me and a couple of my buddies had talked about a iron patch in Brandy that was in the middle of the Confederate camp. And we had talked about taking basically for 3 days and pulling 2 foot of dirt or 1.5 foot of dirt all the way off the top and just sifting all the nails off. And I would go do that tomorrow.
That's a good idea. That is a very good idea. And a lot of these Confederate camps have been pounded pretty hard. Of course, everybody's going after the Confederate camp. And, of course, I've hunted a few in Virginia that was nail infested. And if you excavate, say, 10 by 10 spot, well, there's no telling what's under them nails.
There on the New York Hill that last day, right at the end of the hunt, I mean, we were just down to the wire, and neither one of us had found what we thought we ought to have found at a DIV hunt. But we got in there around, I know you know where I'm talking about, Earl, where there was the tree grew out of the rock there. And,
where you went to the bathroom.
Yeah, well, we dug the bathroom out. Me and Jeff did, and it was full of ration cans. But we found 2 or 3 bullets, 2 or 3 buttons in there, a couple of suspender clips. I mean, things that you just couldn't hear with a metal detector. Yeah,
you just dig it out and use your hand probe.
Yeah,
I've seen that done. I've seen that done at several sites where you just rake back an inch or 2 of soil in 10 by 10 spot, and it's a whole new world.
Have you ever done that anywhere, Earl?
Yeah, one time when the first paid hunt I ever went to, which was through a different group, it was at Wall Point. It's on the James River down there, which is where the White Oak Museum's at. And that's how we ended up digging out of there. Man, we just got in the middle of a thicket and started hacking away, and it had about 3 inches of loom. We raked back the loom in about 10 by 12 spot, and there was this stuff all over the place that you couldn't even hear at all until you did that. And it didn't take much. It was just enough to get the loom layer off to break the surface, and then it was just screaming with relics. They did that at Hansburg Ridge, too, the first day we were in there. The whole weekend, the first time we hunted Hansburg Ridge. They were just raking out the big thickets, and there was a couple guys that bought rakes the second day and just started raking stuff out, and you get that loom busted, and they were finding relics for 2 days after that.
Yeah.
And I noticed... Go ahead. Matt?
Oh, I was just going to say, this gentleman's post said he had hunted basically a virgin site, but he said 70% of the relics he found were by hand when he decided to sift when all the other relics. And he had a tremendous amount of stuff.
Yeah. It just takes patience. It takes a lot more patience than swinging a coil.
It sure does. And I've seen on the Wisconsin hill, every time I've hunted that, it needed a good bush hoggy. And then a weed eater would have been a good investment the times I've been there. But I guess the last hunt they cut it a little bit closer. So
I wish they'd have bush hogged that back field at the New York camp there. I mean, there's no telling what's back there, is there, Matt?
Yeah.
Oh, it would have been unlimited. Yeah. I mean, I really think that there's some, the relics there weren't deep. The guys with the big coils, the reason the big coils did well because you had 10 inches of space with grass. But the guys who worked the small coils did great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Would either one of y'all go back to that New York hill again?
I'd go in a heartbeat.
I would too.
I would go with.
Go ahead.
I would go with lesser people.
Yes, about 150.
Yeah,
I was thinking 100.
There's a lot of people there.
I bumped into that guy who made that one plate. Y'all remember that plate where it had the inscription on the front? I can't remember that gentleman's name.
It was an incredible
I think you
plate.
ran into him. He
was Rev War, right?
Yeah, do you remember what his name was?
I do not.
He got in. He bumped into me that last day at lunch and started telling me he ended up finding a spot right after lunch that I talked to him a little bit about. It was down there behind where the barn was at the bottom. That little creek when you first came in, there was a little tiny creek there at the barns. If you followed that creek down along the barns, down going south, parallel to the Wisconsin camp, he got in a site down there. I think he found a plate and all kinds. He was finding gun parts and all kinds of stuff down there right before they left in the last 2 hours. And I was talking to him, and he said, "I'd go back. If I go back, I would be down in that holler." Because he said, He goes, he's by himself, and he was just getting signals right and left down there. So I would take a shot at that.
All the way down there where the colonial houses were?
No, when we first came in, when we first drove into the property, where the barn was at.
Oh, really?
You're talking about where the Vermont camp was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Turn left. As soon as you came in on the left-hand side where nobody went hardly at all, followed that creek down. He followed the creek down and went down the corner there. There was a little drop-off in that hill and a flat where the creek was at, and he was finding stuff right and left down in there.
Man, Jeff Ford said he would go back for the installed escalator. I think we would all go back if they installed an escalator.
It sure would be easy.
Well, Matt, where you had the Godzilla suit, where y'all did that little skit up there, there's still a lot of stuff in there, man. That was where that house site is. I would get closer to that road. I'd go back and hunt that road bed a little bit closer and down to the left of that where that big tree was. Where we parked, boy, on that left side. I don't think anybody went on that left side, and I'd be willing to bet a good bit of that stuff is down on that left side of that tree down there.
Well, now, me and Jeff hunted down in there a little bit, didn't we, Jeff?
We did, yep. And then, of course, that's where the wind about blew us off the mountain, wasn't it? Or the hill?
No, I'm talking about where we parked at, just on the other side of those troughs in that field there, all of that. We didn't find anything there.
Yeah, of course, and needed a big weed eater. So, but yeah, I mean, yeah, we hunted that a little bit, and then, we never did find anything. So, but it's
a lot of the VLS machines did really well up there. I hunted with the Deus on that hillside for about 2.5 hours just because I didn't want to go up the hill that needed an escalator.
Yep.
And I did really well with it because most of those targets were very shallow.
Yep.
So I mean, they weren't more than 3 or 4 inches in the ground. I found 4 or 5 flat buttons, and there were some weird things up there. You know, I had a gentleman bump into me and was like, "Oh, look at this piece of junk in my trash pouch," and he pulls it up. It's perfectly round, but it's been in half. I said, "Well, if you want to get rid of your piece of junk breastplate, I'll take it." He had never found a plate. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I found that plumb bob. That plumb bob I found was right there along the road, right there, right at the top of the hill, the very peak of that hill, right there where the cars were at. The cars were 5 feet away, and the plumb bob was there. And right along that fence line, I found a large cent had been hammered, 2 or 3 nice big old colonial buttons, and there was stuff in there, but you had to deal with all the iron that was in there. There was a ton of iron. I mean, you could dug iron for a month out of there. But in the midst of that, there were some good little signals, like Matt was saying, that were fairly shallow. They were just screaming at you.
So have either one of y'all, both of y'all been locals? Okay, now I've heard you could go to Beauregard and give them so much a day to hunt. Have y'all been to these farms and hunted other than a DIV?
I haven't. I've heard that same thing too. I heard it was like $75 a day or something. I've never done it. I don't even know if that's for sure, but that's a rumor mill, yeah.
That's what I've heard, but I don't know for sure. What about you, Matt? Have you?
No, I mean, it's not to my knowledge that that's the case. You know, there are guys that have private permissions to these farms, and you know, that's kind of a disservice to them. It's not something I personally would do, especially having a limited access to a previous DIV site. You know, I feel like that's a little. Most of them, the landowners I deal with, don't really like my landowner. If I can get in touch with them, they don't care, but they're so busy that they just don't want to be bothered with that kind of stuff.
That's something that I was going to ask both of you. With that many people detecting in your area, how hard is it to get permissions on those Civil War sites?
Extremely. Extremely hard. Most of them are protected. They're either local Civil War sites or state Civil War sites, or they're fed up from people night hunting on their property that they don't want you in there, period. Or they've been hunted hard in the 70s when the guys wrote all the books.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the case. I mean, he's in the valley, you know, so he's farther west than I am, which I've always dreamed of hunting the Shenandoah Valley one, just to say I've done it, you know. But here around where I live in Central Virginia, I mean, I have 5, you know, major battles that had combined 75,000 plus troops on each battle. And, you know, if you're smart about it, and I don't know how it is in the valley, if you think outside the box and you really, really put your nose to the grind, great permissions are still out there. But if you're one of those guys who goes up and says, this one's in the center of a battlefield, and it's a massive farm, and you knock on the door, you're liable to get shot.
Yep, yeah, I agree. The thing you got to look for is not so much the battlefield, but look at it where they were staged before that. If you get a lot of these battlefield maps, which are quite prevalent for the Shenandoah Valley, it will tell you where they were staged the day before, or the hours before, the night before, and the night after. And then those are the spots you want to get into. That's where they're dumping their gear before they go into battle, and there's some killer finds in there still that people haven't hunted, because, like you said, back in the days in the 70s, they were hunting the battlefields and the camps. All that other stuff, the little outposts and all that, were highly overlooked, or they just didn't care about them because they wanted to carry their 5-gallon buckets of breastplates and sword plates and gun parts and all that.
Well, that's something that I was kind of wondering about. You know where the battles and things are, but then when you can find those pre-stage areas, I was just wondering how many relics that you could expect to find at a pre-stage site like that. Quite a few, you think?
I'm going to be honest, one of my favorite sites that I had, and it was very short-lived, it was a coworker had a piece of property up near Fisher's Hill Battlefield. He was on the outskirts of it. And the day he told me to come up to his house, he had a small plot, like 3 acres, and he's right outside of Strasburg, Virginia. But I didn't even know it at the time. I didn't know it until after I dug there first day or so, then I got a battlefield map out. But he was right on the fringe of the 11th Corps, I believe it was 11th Corps, 19th Corps, I think it was the 19th Corps, that was staged at 3 a.m. before the Battle of Fisher's Hill. And they'd actually dug, he told me, go down there to the power line. He had a power line running through the back of his property. He says, well, you run 4-wheelers down there. He says, go hunt all through there. So I go down there. I wasn't there 5 minutes. I see this trench down there. I said, have you been running your 4-wheeler down there? He said, yeah, that trench down there. I said, yeah, we run down there all the time. Well, it turned out that trench was a freaking rifle pit to the 19th Corps where they dug in the morning of the battle. they were held there in reserve. So I found a North Carolina button, some trouser buttons, infield butt plate. I got a silver script writing pencil, and a bunch of other stuff, and like 10 visits there. And then he got a divorce from his wife, and then I lost the property. But I would give anything to go back to that spot because there was just unbelievable amount of stuff in there. It was just laying, literally, like Matt said, it was laying most of it. I dug a breastplate that was 2 inches in the ground, and there was an invisible dog fence right beside of it. I mean, it was just crazy stuff in there, and it was all practically laying right on the ground.
Well, the reason that I asked about it is because this last week there's a guy, he got a hold of me about a month ago, and he's been doing quite a bit of research and everything and sharing some of that with me. And but he got a hold of me, and he had found a map that none of us knew existed. And what it is a pre-stage area where 2nd Kentucky, these are all Confederate troops, 2nd Kentucky, a group of Georgia troops, another group of Texas Ranger troops. But anyway, this map shows exactly their pre-stage place. And I went and hunted a little bit at one of those. I'm not for sure that I'm exactly where I need to be yet, and only got permission on one part of it. But the only thing that I found there was a round ball, and I was just wondering, on a pre-stage area like that where they set up before they go into battle. Of course, I know it would depend on how long that they were there. I just wonder what conceivably that you could find at a pre-stage area. Is it a good spot, or is it just kind of hit and miss?
Look, think of it this way: if the battle they were engaged in was any kind of a battle, meaning let's say 5,000 or more, I would say that their thought was, we can be in battle from morning to night. The things you're going to need is be light and to have water and all that. So a lot of times what they did is they shed their packs and they shed their gear, and they go into battle with their cartridge box, they go in the canteen, they go in their rifle, and the rest of the stuff sitting there on the ground, and hopefully they get to come back and get it. Yep. So there's a gold mine sitting there if you find the right spot, more than likely, if it was a decent engagement. Now, if it was just a skirmish or something, maybe it's not going to be near that. But like Fisher's Hill, it was 2 days before the Battle of Cedar Creek, which was the final stand for basically Confederates in Shenandoah Valley, and they were already run out of Winchester 2 days before that for 3rd Winchester. So they had their tails between their legs already, and they were being chased. So my odds were higher because they were trying to get lighter and lighter all the time because they were getting their butts chased all the way down the valley at the point in time. So that place for the 19th Corps was a gold mine to me, but I didn't have it but short-lived. So if there's a decent battle, I would say, yeah, keep trying to find that spot and go after it.
And a lot of times I've seen that they would hide their valuables and then hopefully come back to get it. And, of course, unfortunately, sometimes they wasn't able to come back to get it. So,
or they got flushed out of the battle and lost and had to go another direction. They didn't have the opportunity to get back there. There's a lot of reasons for that.
Yeah, or captured, and taken out.
And that makes a lot of sense for the places I hunt that are major battlefields, because I don't get to go to those rear staged areas. One, they are hammered. I mean, they've absolutely been destroyed by old relic hunters. But the places I do find, especially hunting with the GPX, like my bayonet trench I have, there's not a single button in it. It's loaded full of bullets and everything else. Well, there's two parts of it. It was 95 degrees the day they fought there. They didn't fight in coats. They had exactly what Earl's talking about, is they had bayonets, they had guns, muskets, maybe a Bowie knife, maybe a belt buckle if they had it on. But they didn't fight in no coats.
No, they didn't. No. And the time of the year makes a lot of difference. And, I know a lot about this spot here. I know it was in July. I know that the battle itself lasted probably less than 2 hours. It's kind of just a hit and run. But also, I know where the artillery set up, the exact hill that the artillery set up. And I didn't know that until I found this map. And it's full of iron up there. But I think that there was some kind of more modern structure, like early 1900s thing up there. So it's probably going to take some time to kind of work through it. But, hey, Matt, while we got you on, Will asked earlier about in the highly mineralized soil, and I know you use GPX at DIV. What do you do with your gain? Do you go down with that, or do you go up?
So my personal gain, I don't know what Earl does with his, but my personal gain's all dependent on who's around me. So if I've got a big coil and I don't have anybody within, say, 30, 40 feet on either side of me, I'm gonna bounce it up to 13, 14, 15. As people start to encroach and that threshold becomes unstable, I start to lower it down, and I'll go down as low as 2, 3, 4.
Huh.
Is that using the GPX?
Yeah, that's using GPS.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what Will was asking, because that's what Will uses. And the reason that I asked is because there was a guy that was on the New York Hill, and I asked him about his gain, and he was using an 11-inch coil, and he told me, he said, I run my gain just as high as it will go.
And some people have the ear for that. If you have the ear that you can hear those wobbles and those tones in between those that high-low woo-woo-woo, and you can hear a break in that and you can hear a tone, go for it. I mean, you're going to get the most depth out of it. I just can't seem to put my head around that, and sometimes it's on an audio overload.
Man, I'm the same way, Matt. I can't handle that. I mean, I've got to lower my gain down where it's run stable, but I've been at DIVs, and then especially with the big coil, the 15-inch, and man, it's very hard to get it stable, and until you run your sensitivity down to, say, 5. And of course, I know with any GPX, with your gain on 5, you're still getting pretty deep. So
yeah, I mean, my experience is the more stable, the more apt you are to hear the ultra deep target. I don't care. I mean, you can fight through that high-low wobble, but if you really want to dig something deep, you've got to have a flat threshold. And I mean, the deepest stuff I've dug were just breaks, but they were consistent in 2 directions. And you dig it, and it keeps going, and then you get down 1.5 feet, and you're like, well, there's the tone. And then you go another 2.5 foot, and there's a shell or a bayonet or a conglomerate of bullets, you know. So.
Oh yeah. Now, how awesome is that? If you get this little bitty peep in your threshold, and then you take maybe 6 inches off of it, and it gets a little bit louder, and you take a few more inches off, and it gets even louder. That is a feeling that's like no other. So, you know, there's something good there once you start doing that.
Earl, you hunt with a 4500?
No, I don't have a GPX at all. I got a White Sim XT and a Garrett AT Pro. I'm a VLF.
I got you. Well, we got to get you a GPX out in the valley.
Yeah, truthfully, I'd love to have one. I just can't simply afford it, man. It's out of my budget for what I do. I mean, I don't get to hunt as much as I need to anymore or want to. I got my daughter plays softball and work. I work nights, and it's complicated for me to justify. The expense of a GPX just doesn't cut it for me right now.
Yeah. They're not cheap. There's no doubt about that. Hey, guys, let's run one more commercial, and we'll be right back. If you want to keep up with what's going on in the metal detecting world, then you need to be a subscriber to American Digger magazine. Butch and Anita Holcomb are the publishers of the magazine and have won awards for 3 straight years for being the best digger magazine on the market. American Digger magazine is available in both print and digital formats, so no matter where you live in the world, you can enjoy the latest happenings in the hobby. You can get in touch with American Digger magazine by going to americandigger.com or give them a call at 770-362-8671, and be sure and tell them that you heard it on Relics Radio. And I want to remind everybody also that coming up in the January-February issue of American Digger magazine, I've got Jeff Ford, Wes Stringer, and Chris Heimsoff. Sorry about that, Chris. Got all tongue-tied here. But The Great Silver Hoard, that article is coming out, and I can't wait to see that. I've got another question for both of you guys since you live in Virginia, and I don't know that you can answer it. But what percentage of Civil War relics do you think have already been found in Virginia? And what percentage do you think still is there?
Wow.
That's a tough question. I'll be willing to bet, Matt. I mean, I'm impressed with what you're all coming with, but you're doing some extremes in the water that's paying off really well.
He's draining the swamp is what he's doing.
I mean, if you count in the waterways, and there's a lot of people hitting water nowadays. When I talk about a lot more diggers in Virginia, especially in my area, most of them are in the water nowadays, but it's been hard to do that this year. But the waterways, I think, is still, there's a gold mine there sitting, and I think there's still a lot of I think there's good amount of relics still out there in Virginia. You just got to be more out of the box to get it.
Yeah, I think it's, if I had to put a number on it, my number would be 30% of the relics ever lost have been found.
I agree.
And that's just, that's my just so out of the box number between this summer and part of that's a double-edged sword. We've had an incredible summer with the guys I hunt with, but between some of the stuff I've learned and the research techniques and stuff like that, I think between that and the combination of new machines, you're going to find, 10 years, I think people are still going to be pulling these kind of relics out. Unfortunately, with 10 years from now, the condition isn't going to be what it was.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Especially in the valley, the buttons are almost non-existent anymore. They're pretty much hammered. I mean, all the fertilizers and the bullets are created. And your primary things are bullets and steel plates and iron and what's left of them. The buttons aren't going to make it another 15 or 20 years, I don't think. But the majority of them in my area.
Well, they're losing each day. The buttons are, because they're so delicate. They're made of brass and everything, and they're losing quality. There's no doubt about that. I don't think the bullets are really going away, although whenever you get a burnside, I don't know if it was inferior lead or what it was. Those seem to be rotting a little bit, or the ones that I find are. And, I don't know. But that's impressive that you think that maybe 30% has been found and 70% is still there.
I agree with his number. I agree with that number as well.
And I'd say around here, the campsites are the same way. I mean, you have your Confederate campsites that, there's a lot still out there that no one they never documented. They just stayed there for a couple of days, hiding away, then they leave and then maybe come back, and then, especially around here now, I don't know about Virginia.
I'm going to be honest, my town, there's a couple different rumors and numbers out there, but my town changed hands somewhere between 70 and 72 times that they documented during the war. And it was occupied before, during, after, and it was field hospitals, about 3 battles in town, 2 battles out of town, multiple battles down the valley. And, yeah, there's stuff. I can pretty much go out and dig anywhere around my house within a 25-mile radius, and somewhere within an hour, I guarantee I'll find a Civil War relic. It doesn't matter where you go. You just, you know what I'm saying? So to say it's all dug, there's just no way to say that because there's so much area that they covered. You'll never find it all. You'll never find it all.
Well, see, the local battle here, it's next to my house. It's called the Battle of Hartsville, and it was a John Hunt Morgan camp. They marched from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. It was on November the 7th, 1862. And, of course, this farm has been pounded. Just pounded with VLFs. And Loy, I can go now with GPXs, and then, of course, that's how I found that gold ring. We find a handful of bullets every time we go. So.
Oh, man, it's like it's a bonanza there with the GPX. I was really surprised because I know that place has been hunted to death. But I found one little spot where you found that one little spot where you found the gold ring and everything. Mm-hmm. And you just have to slow down. The relics that are real shallow and real easy to find, they've already been found. But if you just slow down and really go slow and really pick through all the trash and listen to the signals, I would say that probably 70% of the sites that we hunt right now that there's relics still there. 70% of them. They're going to be deep, and they're going to be mixed in with iron and stuff, but, we hadn't found it all.
They never will.
So, and I'll use this example. So my good friend had an opportunity to use a track hoe on the side of the fort, and I know that sounds horrible to destroy a fort like that, but a developer was going to destroy it, and he got the opportunity to basically excavate this fort layer by layer over the course of a little more than 48 hours. They said in 50 some hours, they dug for 42 hours of that time. And they found that the Civil War relics, the Union relics were on top. Then there was a level of Confederate bullets, and then there was another level of Union bullets. And then finally at 12.5 feet below the initial grade, a 16-foot total depth, they found their last bullet.
Goodness gracious.
And I'm glad he got in there and was able to do that before it was developed.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really incredible thing that he found somebody that's willing to let him do that, especially with a machine like that. They found 3,000 or 4,000 bullets, and a handful of buttons, handful of plates. It was mostly a skirmish fort that they fought back and forth in and out of. And it's just incredible to think that relics were that deep in the ground. So that only makes me know how many items are still left in the ground for other people to find, hopefully long after I'm gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and they will be, Matt. You look at these forts, they've dug trenches. You get 20,000 men with shovels digging a trench. They can move a lot of dirt in a little short of time. And, you look at everything that they've covered up, and it's always going to be there. Like you said, well, the buttons won't, maybe the bullets will, but, everything's deteriorating every day. But, a lot of it's still going to be there.
Hey, guys, we got another call in. Denny Morrison. What's going on, Denny?
Hi, Roy. I was just listening in a little bit. I got on here a little bit late, but it's interesting. Especially at the campsites where we dig at DIV, things are so deep. But you got to understand, these guys were there in the wintertime and early spring, and they had horses and they had wagons. And guess where? When you drop a bullet or a button or a bayonet or maybe a plate, and a horse stomps on it about 99 times, or the cows and the oxen they had out there pulling the cannons around, all that stuff pushed that stuff down in the ground. It's going to be deep, and yeah, it's still there, but with a GPX, you got to go, what we say in Virginia, you got to go low and slow.
That's exactly right. And, the huts that they dug, too. How deep are those huts, Matt?
The ones that I found on the last productive hut site, those were pretty shallow ones. Even the Wisconsin Hill, they were just simple dug-in floors that they used with the dirt. So that
the reason they were at the Wisconsin Hill, that was all rocks up there. And they couldn't dig it very deep. But
even the fire pits and stuff, you have to think they went back to this place winter after winter too.
Have you ever been to Excelsior Camp?
No, and I know it's a lot less rocks up there.
Well, it's also very deep. I dug a bullet and a button out at 2 feet, and a fella told me, he said, "Keep digging, Denny. That's a hut." And we dug over 80 rounds out, my partner and I, of just bullets. I got a cathedral bottle out of there, cross cannons, and a red pop can. Now, you know why that red pop can was in there? A guy wrote a book several years ago. He's dead now, and I can't think of his name. It just slips my mind. But he and another fellow went by the Excelsior Camp for years, and they stopped and asked the farmer, "I wonder if we could metal detect this sometime." The guy says, "You won't find anything out there." He says, "I've been picking that stuff up off the ground." And anyway, these guys finally got in there and hunted that ground, and then they talked the farmer into pushing some of the ground off of the hut sites, and they could actually see the black dirt where the huts were at. and they dug down, and all they were looking for were buckles, mostly because they left the bottles. All they took is the buckles and anything that was a high dollar, and they throw a pop can in each one of the huts so they could find it later on when it was covered back up. And I found one of them, and it had a red pop can in the bottom of that hut. And my partner and I were standing in the hut, and you could barely see our heads out over the dirt pile.
Yeah, but I mean, I honestly think that's generally the exception and not the rule in a lot of places.
Not necessarily. You figure if anybody's tall at all, and if they were, I know they weren't 6 feet tall, but you get 2 5-footers in there, and you're going to, if you got 2 half shelters and you're going to sit in a tent for 5 months, ain't going to happen. You dig down in the ground and you make you a log cabin, and then you put that tent or those shelter halves on top of that, and that is your house. So that hut was in the ground. That's the way it was up at Brandy State or Hansborough Ridge. All those huts were in the ground, pretty deep.
Yeah, they were deep at Hansborough Ridge.
Hey, Earl, have you dug any huts at any of the DIVs?
I have, but I've always been the one that just missed it. I tried 3 or 4. I can be right beside the guy who hit a gold mine, and mine just wouldn't have much in it. It comes down to, do you have a clean freak or do you have a slob? That's pretty much how it works out.
That's just about right, Earl.
Yeah.
You're true.
It's a hit and miss.
And do you know, I've dug several holes probably about 4 foot deep, and then I just got tired of getting the bad holes. So,
yeah.
You know what we're using now, Loy or Matt or Earl? We're actually using a probe that you can get a sample of the dirt. I forget what to call that probe, but you probe down in the ground, and if it comes up with ash in it, you're digging.
Yeah, but there's little core probes. You got
right, like a core probe. That's what the guys are using now.
Yeah.
I tell you what's going to happen in the spring. We had Carl Hara on, and he's making those ground-penetrating radar units and making them affordable now. You can get a pretty good unit there for about $5,000 now, which is not that bad. That's 2 GPXs. And
you know what?
If you had a group
I worked with George Leach for years and at DIV, and if you can figure out what's on that screen, you're better off than I am, because I've looked at it. It looks like a bunch of squiggly lines. And yes, he does find some huts, but more than not, he finds rocks.
Well,
and they've been moved by the farmer.
Carl's stuff is different than that. I mean, it's high definition. And he told us that he's going to be at DIV in the spring, and he's going to bring a unit or 2 there. And we talked to him about maybe getting together with him at one of the DIV hunts this next spring and let him just run that over the ground and find 1 or 2 of those and dig them. This spring, if we all get together up there, we need to get together with him and just try that at least one day. Spend one day just
George actually had a motor on his and ran it around all the fields. He's been at Brandy Rock, Beauregard, Excelsior Camp, all those with that machine of his.
Is that the one that J. Doug bought off of him?
Yep, it is.
Okay. And J. Doug, he ended up finding a lot of pits with it. Well, after he bought it, and then of course unfortunate things happened. So I think he ended up getting rid of it. So.
Yeah, he got a divorce and lost everything. So,
well, he still kept the house. So,
yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And M.A. Lyman is in and digging Canuck. Hey guys, welcome to the show. You'll have to go back and catch most of the archive, but it's been fun so far.
Yeah, I've been trying to get Lloyd to get one of the ground penetrating radars, but
yeah, Lloyd, why don't you get one of those?
Yeah.
Well, same reason that Ken and Mark don't have a GPX. I ain't got the money.
Yeah.
I've got some assets, but you can't buy.
Like down in Kentucky and Tennessee, did they have winter camps where they dug down in the ground, or did they just have the tents above the ground?
I don't think they dug in much here.
Yeah, they didn't
think so.
There was a couple of winter camps that they may have dug in a couple of times, but not nothing like in Virginia. No.
See, the ones we dig in, especially at Brandy Station or Brandy Rock, those were Confederate huts before they were Union huts.
Yeah,
that's why we find a lot of tongues and things in those areas, because the Confederates used them long before the Union guys used them.
Yeah.
And that's the thing we run in on up here and down there is, of course, the Confederates had it first, and then the Union come in and took it over, and then like in my town, the Confederates come back and took it over, and then, I mean, they would camp at the same place every time, of course.
Sure. Where's that? Winchester, it took that 72 times. It changed hands 72 times, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Basically, what happens in our area is like you're all saying. Once one leaves, the other one was skedaddling out of town, the other one was coming into town, and they already had their camp set up, and the water was there, and their choice sites to begin with. So they just fill right in where the other group left out. And most of your camps are intermingled like that Sheridan's camp where I found dispensers and stuff. And out there, it was a mix. It was early stuff was Confederate. There was Union stuff in there. There was stuff you could tell that was stripped off of Union stuff that Confederates used later, and it just flip-flopped back and forth. Whoever was in town at the time grabbed the prime spot.
I think most of the time, and I'm seeing Ken Guthrie and Chris Heimsoff talking about that they don't find huts in Georgia and they don't find them in Missouri. I think it's the climate. If you had a spot that was real cold weather, like Northern Virginia, you're going to have some cold winters there, and they've got to dig in. But whenever you come down to Georgia, you're not going to have a really bitter winter. I mean, you'll have some cold days. Same thing in Middle Tennessee. Same thing for the most part, I guess, in Missouri and Southern Kentucky. You're not going to have those bitter winters like that. So I think it has to do with, the climate and where you're at and everything. But there was another question I wanted to ask you, Earl. What is one thing that you think you should have found, but you still haven't found it?
An entire artillery shell. I found fuses. I found bases. I found the shot. I got 2/3 of a reed shell, but I've never gotten an entire shell. I had them dug right beside of me. And DIV, I had one round ball the first time we were in the back where the New York camp's at, or the Wisconsin Hill. I gave up a spot. We had about an hour left, and the guy dug around. There was an old house right there, about 10 by 12, and it had a root cellar in it, and there was a door on the root cellar. And I was sitting there, and this guy comes up, "Do you mind if I metal detect?" And I said, "No," and I moved around the back, and propped open on the door in the root cellar was a freaking solid round shot, 12-pound round shot. And I gave up the spot. I sat there and watched him dig it, man. I was like, "You freaking kidding me, man?" And that's how close I came to digging one. I've never dug a whole shell, and that's been on my list.
That sounds like me and you, Loy.
I know it. Yeah, if we didn't have bad luck, we wouldn't have no luck at all sometimes.
Yeah.
What else other than a shell?
Came close to GW button. My buddy Ian I was telling you about, we had a spot we were sharing, and I still might get permission to go back there. There was a spot, literally, it had no signals at all except for a peep or two, and we got to dig it, and we were finding some coins and stuff. There was an old colonial cabin on the other side of the creek, and they were building a really small development. I think 2 houses went in, and we got to get in there. That was when you can still go into construction sites. It's almost impossible to do that anymore, but I couldn't go back the second day. We had about a 3-day window, and I couldn't go back the second day. I had to go to work, and I said, "You go back there." It says, "Take a shot. We only got 3 days. Go hit it." He goes back the next day, found a pocket knife, and the second signal, and the only signal he got, the good signal, was a freaking GW button with all the states on the outside, with all the gold gilt in the right places. It was just a killer button. So they're around here in this area. I know where a couple others have been found. I would love to find one of them.
Oh, I bet. Okay, what is your best colonial relic that you've ever found?
Probably what you call them big dandy buttons. It's nothing worth any money or anything, but I found some silver dollar size colonial flat buttons that got the floral motifs on it that I just think are great as heck. I'd take a dozen of them any day of the week. I just think they're awesome.
I
as
do
far
too.
as spectacular colonial find and nothing major, just mainly those big dandy buttons. I just think they're incredible.
Yeah, I do too. I love finding those. There's no doubt about it. And there's another thing we don't find at our sites because we don't dig any pits or anything like that. But we don't find any of the old pipe parts, smoking pipe parts. But y'all do in Virginia, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, occasionally. There's a spot out there at White's Lake that we got to dig a little bit. They put a housing development in, and that's where those big dandy buttons are finding. And I got a couple pipe stems out of there. You find them occasionally. They're not something you find quite regular. Most of our colonial stuff is local here in town in about a 6-block radius, and it's 4 foot deep. There's been colonial sites there, and then there was another site there, then you had a burn layer, and then so everything colonial, mostly down in my downtown area, is all buried like 4 or 5 feet deep. So if you get lucky and find a colonial site, it's usually in the county, and they're usually hard to get on the property in the county areas because you got older people that just don't want you on their land. But colonial sites are hard to find, so if you get one, it's usually tight-lipped around here in this area. Nobody really talks about colonial sites. They covet them.
I do too. When you can find one. There's more of those down in Jeff's neck of the woods than there is in mine. But I've been lucky here. I've found probably 5 or 6 here, and probably shouldn't have found that many. I tell you what, it's been a good time, Earl. We're coming up on the bottom of the hour, and probably going to need to close the show out. Tell everybody how they can get in touch with you, your Facebook, your YouTube, and all that.
Yeah, my Facebook is by my name, which is spelled different. Bill O'Reilly kind of made a joke about that one night. It's ERLE, and then my last name is Shull, SHULL. That's my Facebook page. Everything else, I got an Instagram, I got a Twitter account, and I got a YouTube account. They're all under Earl from Virginia, ERLE FROMVA. If you just punch that up, you'll find me.
And he's got some good videos out, and puts some pretty good finds up and everything. And I tell you what, the greatest thrill that I have ever got was when we got to Virginia last spring. Earl met us at the motel there and gave us our Relics radio banner. If you've ever seen that, that came from Earl from Virginia. He had that made for us off of our the picture that we've got on our Facebook group there that has the logo and Digging with 7 and Tennessee Jeff. What a great gift, wasn't it, Jeff?
It sure was. And if you go to the video where we were at the Relic show in Chattanooga, we had it up behind us as we were doing the podcast. So,
and
thank you very much, Earl.
We're gonna have it up, and
appreciate it.
We're gonna have it.
That was my pleasure to do that. I kept looking at you guys saying they need a freaking banner. So we had a place called Fast Signs here in the town. I worked with them and did some stuff and finally got her done, and I was happy about that. That's something I wanted to do for you guys.
Well, it was above and beyond, and it is beautiful. And we're going to go to the South Carolina show in the spring. Well, I guess it'll be late winter instead of spring. Intend to take it there, and I just got word that there's another show in Middle Tennessee that's coming up that we might try to hit. I don't know, but anyway, what a great gift, and we really appreciate it. Appreciate everybody that come in on the chat, everybody that's listening. Appreciate all the calls that we got, and what else you got, Jeff?
That's it. I was just going to thank everybody in the chat, and this is the reason we do this show, and thanks for everybody that called in. So.
Hey, Matt Howell, have you got a Relics Radio T-shirt?
I do not.
You do now. We're going to give you one for calling in, so send me your information and what size that you need and everything. And courtesy of Ken and Mark Guthrie, detectors.com. Go check them out, and they're great guys. They make great shirts. And when you get that, you be sure that you take a picture of yourself and enter the contest. We're going to give away a Garrett Pro Pointer AT sometime in November. I'm waiting until everybody can get those shirts. I get a message every now and then that people are saying, I've got mine ordered, and as soon as I get it, I'm going to put my picture on there. And so do that. And also, Jeff, we're giving away a metal detector, ain't we?
We sure are. We're going to give it away during the Christmas. So, I mean, there you go. You go in online and on Loy's page and fill out for it, and maybe you can win a gold find.
Yeah, it's a Go Find 44, and that's courtesy of our good buddy Tim Henderson with Murray Branch Outdoors. I think the drawing on that is going to be December the 13th is what I've got on that page. We'll give you a number. All you have to do is just comment on that video, go find, and we'll give you a number. I think we got about 152 or 153 people entered in that right now. But there's no age limit or anything. Anybody can get in it. Just go to Digging with 7, and it's the Christmas giveaway, the Go Find 44. So go register for that, and you may win it. Be a good Christmas gift there for you. But anyway, appreciate everybody being here tonight. And if you like shows like this, be sure and catch Beyond Sight and Sound on Sunday and Wednesday night with Josh Kimmel. It's at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And then on Monday night, All Metal Mode is on at 8 p.m. Eastern, and American Digger Relic Roundup is on at 9 o'clock Eastern. History Seekers are on at 9 o'clock Eastern on Tuesday night, and then Hardcore Metal Detecting is on Thursday and Saturday night at 8 o'clock. And obviously, me and Jeff will be back on Relics Radio this next week with a good guest at 8 o'clock Eastern next Thursday night. Until then, we will close the show out, and you guys get out there and find you some history. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Relics Radio. We really do appreciate it. Be sure and join us live each Thursday night at 7 o'clock Central Time, 8 o'clock Eastern here on Spreaker. Or you can catch the archive show at Relics Radio on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, or iTunes. Please take a minute and hit the like button, and be sure and follow us so that you'll get notifications of all of our upcoming broadcasts. You can also find us on YouTube at Digging with 7 or Tennessee Jeff, or you can check us out on our Relics Radio Facebook page. If you'd like to get in touch with us, then send an email to diggingwith7@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We hope you'll join us next Thursday night, and until then, get out there and dig some history.